Hello, I'm Earl Johnson, and I'm going to be your instructor for Major Profits. I regret that I'm not going to be able to be with you on this first day of class, but it is my problem. I scheduled something not recognizing that school was going to be starting this week, and I was not able to get out of the scheduled appointment. But I am excited about this class, and I do look forward to being with you on the following week. But there are some things I'd like to share with you concerning this class that we have this semester, Major Profits. The book that we're going to be using is a book titled The Message of the Prophets. And it's a good book. I think you're going to enjoy utilizing it. It's easy reading, and it is not a extremely large book. I think that you will appreciate the book and its contents. But what I'd like to do for a minute is just say a couple of things about myself and share with you some information about me and my background. I've been at Huntsville Bible College as an instructor for 13 years. I have enjoyed all of those years there. I think it's a great institution, great administrative staff, great administrator, president, and great instructors. And so I think that your choice to come to Huntsville Bible College is a good one. I think that you're going to get some of the best instruction that you can get in a Bible college setting. A couple of things I need to share about myself. One is that I attended my undergraduate studies at Alabama A&M University, and then went on from there to Sanford University, the Beeson Divinity School, and then ultimately to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, where I finished my doctorate in ministry. And so that's kind of my academic background. I work for the government also. I'm a contracting officer for the Army Contracting Command, and also I'm pastor of Christ Community Church here in Huntsville. Next week I'll try to take time to go around the class and allow you to introduce yourselves. But just want to share a little bit about myself. I'm married, I have two grown children. They're out of college. And my wife is a retired teacher and worked with me at the church as my co-pastor. And so just a little bit about myself. But I do want to talk some more about the institution, Huntsville Bible College. It's a great institution. It has done great works here in the city, not just here in Huntsville, but in the surrounding area, as well as other parts of the country through their online classes. So I want to encourage you to look forward to this semester, do your best, and continue your theological training at Huntsville Bible College. Now, I want to share with you a little bit about the syllabus and what the expectations are for this class this semester. Well, the first thing I do want to share is that the class will meet on Tuesdays from 7:30 until 9:50, and normally I will spend most of that time. If for some reason we don't take a break, I may let you out about 5 minutes early, but or 10 minutes early. It depends, but normally we go the length of the class, and we just need that time to complete the material that is prepared for you. And I know that you want to be able to complete that material. The other thing that I like to mention about is attendance. Attendance is very important. As a matter of fact, if you miss 3 classes, then you will jeopardize your ability to pass the class. I will take the roll through Campus SUS. I will take the roll, and it is important for you to make sure that you're present every day for school and so for class. And if you miss more than 3 classes, then I would have to have a discussion with the dean of the instructions, and we will have to determine whether or not you'll be able to continue this class. So I just want to help you to understand the importance of making sure that you attend class. Also on the syllabus, you'll find out that 5% of your grade is going to be based on your attendance in this class. And so I want to encourage you to be present. Now, I know that there are extenuating circumstances. Sometimes you're sick. You may have family members that are sick, or you may be attending something that is important to you and important to your family. Those types of things you need to discuss with me, and we will see if it's something that can be considered an excused absence. But that is not the policy of the school to simply allow you to miss more than 3 days and still allow you to continue in the class. So this is very important, and I want to encourage you to make sure that you are in class. Now, I will talk more about some of the house keeping things on next week when I return, but I just wanted to share that with you because attendance is very important. I want to turn to our syllabus for just a minute, and it's very important for you to look at the syllabus. I'm going to try to have it out there online. At the same time, hopefully, if it's not online, you have hard copies provided to you in class on today. But I want to talk about the class description, major prophets. It is basically a study. What we're going to focus on is a study of the Old Testament major prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, with regard to their messages from God to the people's response, and God's reaction. So that's the course description for the major prophets. Now, we'll look at the course objectives. We have several course objectives. First of all, we're going to discuss the history of Old Testament prophecy. And then secondly, we're going to identify the authorship and composition of the Old Testament prophetic books. And thirdly, list the prophets of the Old Testament and time of their prophecy. Now, as we continue to look down the course objectives, we want to explain or be able to, what I expect you to be able to do is explain the four major prophets and their basic message. Then we want to make sure that in this class we name the kings during the prophetics, or during the prophecies rather, of the major prophets and Old Testament prophetic period. Explain the historical and theological context of the major prophets. Discuss the terminologies of Old Testament prophecy. Explain the difference between the prophecies of Daniel and the other three major prophets. Explain the connection between the Old Testament prophecies and the New Testament, and discuss sin and disobedience, idolatry, justice and punishment, and deliverance in the major prophets. And so I want to talk about those items: sin, disobedience, deliverance, justice, punishment. I want to look at what the prophets are saying to us and what the prophets said during their settings, during the Old Testament time, about these subject matters. Now, if you have a copy of the syllabus, on that syllabus, you will also find the fact that we will utilize this book called The Message of the Prophets by J. Daniel Hayes. Now, there are some other instructions on that syllabus that are important for you. Number one, we have the course outline. If you look at the course outline, we have the lessons, the date of the lessons, as well as the subject matter that will be discussed on those particular days in that particular lesson. That's in the syllabus. Also in the syllabus, you're going to find the general information concerning grading. An A is 4.0, which is an A. A B is 3.0, a C is 2.0, and a D is 1.0, and there's no credit for an F. Now, a couple of things that need to be mentioned concerning the textbook, and that is that there is a companion book that you're not required to buy, but it could be very useful as we talk about the prophets. And that companion book is Preaching from the Prophets by Kyle M. Yates. You may already have that book in your library. If not, you may want to buy it as a companion book to go along with the textbook that we're using this semester. Now, the Bible is always a required text in this class. Another thing about disabilities: if you have a particular disability, if a student has a disability, then that information need to be brought to me so that I can determine with the administration here if there are things that we need to do to help you in facilitating your education here at Huntsville Bible College. And so make sure you let me know if you have a particular disability. And I know that what I have experienced in past times is that there are persons who had difficulty seeing, there are persons who had difficulty hearing, and I had to make some adjustments to ensure that that person had the ability to get the information that's being offered in the class. And so make sure you let me know if there are any disabilities that you you're personally dealing with, so that I can do whatever is necessary to try to accommodate you in class. Now, when we look at how you will be graded in this class participation, as I mentioned earlier, is 5%. But we're going to have also, there's class participation, and then there is participation as far as an assignment that you will have to turn in, and that is also worth 5%. There are going to be 4 tests. One of those tests will be considered the midterm, but then there will also be a final exam and a research paper. The research paper is something that I require in all of my classes, and I like to use Kate-Turabian style. And so I can give you information about Kate-Turabian style, because that is the style guide that I will use in grading your research paper. Now, the research paper is to be 5 to 7 pages long, and you ought to use from 5 to 7 sources in writing your paper. One of your sources can be the Bible, the other source can be the textbook, but you'll need to get other sources in completing your research paper for this class. Now, research paper is very important, and I will be grading it really strict when it comes to the style and content. And so I want to encourage you to make sure that you do your best to produce a research paper. And I can give you a sample of a research paper that is acceptable in my class. Just let me know if you need that assistance. Those are some of the major things concerning the syllabus, and you will have a copy of the syllabus, and I will take a minute on the following week to go over some more of the syllabus, to answer some of the questions that you may have concerning the syllabus. Now, just to take a moment to look at some of the things that we're going to discuss. Today is going to be more of a introductory period of the Old Testament major prophets. But on next week, when I return, we will do a more in-depth study and a more in-depth look at the introduction of the 4 major prophets. Now, when we talk about the major prophets, they are considered the major prophets because their books are larger than the other prophets. And so it's not that their content, it's not that their information is more important than the other prophets in the Old Testament. The difference between the minor prophets and the major prophets is that the minor prophet books are smaller in size and in chapters than the major prophets. And so I wanted to go ahead and make that clear up front, that we're going to be studying the major prophets, but they're considered major prophets because their content is larger than the other prophets in the Old Testament. And not that their content is more important, but it's just more information there. We're going to look into the lives of the prophets. We're going to look into the times of the prophets. We're going to consider the background, the historical and literary background that the prophets, the major prophets, are centered around. We're going to look at the eschatology that's in the prophetic books, especially the book of Daniel. That is an apocalyptic book that deals a lot with the end times. And so we're going to spend a lot of time there trying to understand and trying to instruct on what Daniel is saying with all of the imagery that he utilized. And so we're going to spend a lot of time there to explain that particular book. But we're going to spend ample time on the other 3 major prophets because their material is just as important. I want to encourage you to read ahead. On that syllabus, you will see the reading assignment for the class period that you will be attending each week. Now, the major prophets, the content of their books, The information that is provided is great information that has helped us to understand a lot about what was going on during the time of the early years of the people of God, of the Israelites. It talks about how they veered from God and how God would often raise up a prophet to share with them about their disobedience, their idolatry, their sin. And as this prophet would prophesy and share with them, then they would come back to God, only again to go away from God and back again, and so forth and so on. So we want to look at this kind of chiasmic rather move of the Old Testament, the major prophets, how the people of God would go out away from God, then back to God, then out again, and then back again. And God would have to punish them as a result of their disobedience. And so we want to get into the details of these writers, into their minds, try to understand their theological foundation, try to understand their theological direction, try to understand what they're trying to communicate. We want to look up underneath the verses and try to unravel and unfold information that may be new for you. We want to make sure that this is an experience where your theological mind is stretched, where your biblical information or your biblical ability and knowledge, your theological knowledge is expanded so that you can look at it in a fresh way and perhaps receive a clearer understanding of what these particular writings are about. Now, as we delve into these prophets, as we look into their lives and into their writings, I want to make sure that you understand that at Huntsville Bible College, we are not here to indoctrinate you in any way. Instead, we're here to give you the information, and then you're able to form your own theological position and conclusion. But it is important for us to share all of the information. And I'm going to use the textbook. I'm going to use Preaching from the Prophets. And I'm going to use other resources as well as information that I have researched rather myself concerning these particular major prophets. And I'm going to bring all of that information and try to give you everything that I have so that you'll have all the information and you can utilize it in a manner in which you can help your church to grow and develop, as well as enrich the lives of the people that you come in contact with this information that you have. Now, I want to try to, since this is the first class period, and I'm not going to hold you long because I'm not physically there, but there are some things that I do want to share with you, and I'm going to look just for a minute at some items here in your textbook as we look at the introduction of this particular class and an introduction to the major prophets. Now, if you have your book there, you can turn to page, I want to start at page 16. If you have your book, you want to turn to page 16. And there are a couple of things that I want to share by way of introduction from your textbook. And that is, number one, is that this book is an introductory survey of Old Testament prophetic literature. Now, we're not going to look at all of the prophets. We're going to look at the four major prophets. But I want us to understand that it is an introductory survey of Old Testament prophetic literature. And the other thing that we need to understand is that Old Testament prophetic books provide a critical bridge for continuity between God's message in the Old Testament and God's message in the New Testament. And that's why if you look at the syllabus, you will see that I put in the objectives how we're going to look at how the Old Testament prophets, how they interact with the New Testament. We need to always look at how the Old Testament interact with the New Testament, as well as how the New Testament interact with the Old Testament. And you'll find out that what is written in the Old Testament and in the major prophets is information that's leading you towards the New Testament. And when you look at the New Testament, you find out that it's looking back to the Old Testament. And so we want to look at this prophetic literature. And also, this book attempts to reflect a mainstream, critical, conservative, evangelical approach to the prophets. Within evangelicalism, there are several different theological systems that influence how people read and understand the predictive passages in the prophets. Now, when we talk about the prophets, and we talk especially about those that are talking about eschatology, things in the last days, things to come, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Daniel, all of them are prophesizing about things that are to come. And we want to look at things like amillennialism and premillennialism, and we want to look at them from the perspective of the writers of these four major prophetic books and how they impact things to come as far as eschatology, as far as last things, how they interact with that particular subject matter, last things. So we want to look at that. We want to take a real deep look into the geography, the cities and the countries that are involved with the writings of the major prophets. We want to look at the kings and their lives and how they interact and how God worked through them, how God used them as well. So there are a lot of things that we want to share with you in this particular class, and I look forward to being there on next Tuesday to begin to share this rich information that is coming from the books of these major prophets. It is interesting. We want to look at how not only it impacted their lives, but how this material impacts our lives today. We want to give you opportunities to find great sermons in these books. We want to be able to share with you insight and give you some sermon material, teaching material to make your people aware in your congregations about what the major prophets were sharing and how it impacted our lives. And so I look forward to seeing you on next week. We're going to go ahead and end this here. You're not going to have to stay any longer for class. You can go ahead and leave. But I did want to share this information. Make sure that you have access to a copy of the syllabus. Make sure that you read the reading assignment. And I look forward to seeing you on next Tuesday as we dive deep into this discussion about the major prophets in the Old Testament. God bless you, and I'll see you on next Tuesday.